Alright, Parshas Masei, Shabbos Chazak. As we always say, it's unbelievable, we're at another Shabbos Chazak, and just to make you feel that time is flying like crazy, the next Shabbos Chazak, the next Chazak will be Simchas Torah, if you believe that. It's incredible. The Rosh Hashanah is right around the corner. However, now we are in the 3 weeks, Bein Hametzorim, between the Tanios of Shivasa B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av. Just programming note, we'd like to let everybody know that next week's shir, Thursday night at 10 o'clock, will take place as it did last year, right up the road out to lunch on Cedar Bridge Avenue. And everybody is invited due to the fact that unless Mashiach is here, we will not be eating meat next week, if you are an Ashkenazi. So, next week's shir is out to lunch. Chazal tell us, by Yom Tovim, we know, Chazal tell us that Shoyal and Vidorshin, the halachas of a moed. And we have halacha that it's 30 days before, but either way, a yid, a person is supposed to come into a holiday, you're supposed to come in knowing what you're doing. You're supposed to prepare yourself. In other words, we study, we analyze each zman, and we analyze each occasion to learn and see how it affects us today. We're supposed to study everything there is about the occasion. So now that we're in the Bein Hametzorim, how do we look at these days leading up to Tisha B'Av? So one thing we know, if you learn the Siva Shalom, you know for sure that we do not look at Tisha B'Av, we don't look back and lament what we don't have. That's not the way of a Yid. A Yid doesn't deal just with history. We don't just look back and sort of cry about it, that it's something that we once had. That's something, we don't study history. That's not the way of Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael doesn't do that. According to what the Nesiv Shalom always says, a Yid has to know that on every occasion, whether it's Pesach, whether it's Shavuos, whether it's Sukkot, or whether it's the Bein Hametzorim, whether it's Tisha B'Av, a Yid has to know that there's always a message to teach us something for now. There's something we have to learn every year. There's something we have to learn about Tisha B'Av that's going to move us along, that's going to uplift us, that's going to help us for now. The Siva Shalom brings down the famous Masechta Sofrim in Perek Chaf, which everybody knows, that there's a gezerah on a mace, about somebody who dies. There's a gezerah min hashamayim shenishtachach min alev. In other words, the people will go crazy. In other words, the trauma of death, of a mace, there's a gezerah min hashamayim that you don't forget the person totally, but it wears off. There's something called forgetting, and that's it's actually a gift min hashamayim, that as time goes on, we min hashamayim, we forget things, and we're supposed to forget things. So how do we reconcile that with what we're doing right now? We say in Tehillim, there's a pasuk in Tehillim, famous pasuk. Actually, everybody knew this pasuk, but now it's like the most famous song in the world. Im eshkachech Yerushalayim, tishkach yamini. If I forget Yerushalayim, tishkach yamini. Tidbak l'shoni l'chiki, im lo yazkerechi, im lo ya'alez Yerushalayim, al rosh simchasi, at our most joyous time, I must remember Yerushalayim. I have to remember Yerushalayim. So what about the fact that Min HaShamayim, they want us to forget things? The trauma shouldn't be so fresh, it shouldn't be so real, and for some reason when it comes to Yerushalayim, we say we can never forget Yerushalayim. We're not allowed to forget Yerushalayim. The trauma of us missing Yerushalayim has to be fresh to us every day. It has to mean so much to us every day. So what's going on here? Why is it that way? Zok the Nesiv Shalom, it must be, no. There is a gezerah. There's a gezerah on something which is dead, on something which is a mace. There's a gezerah that it should be forgotten. Zok the Nesiv Shalom, it's a raya from here that Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash is something which is very much alive today. It has to be something that is very much alive. And we know that the gezerah of shikha, of forgetting, is not chal. It doesn't take place. It doesn't work on something or someone which is alive. And it's a proven thing, actually, that a person doesn't have a complete nechama. If somebody is not just got lost somewhere, but the person is still alive, you don't have that same nechama as you would as actually knowing that somebody's not around anymore. Therefore, if somebody forgets Yerushalayim, you're forgetting something which is alive. What does it mean if you forget Yerushalayim? It means that you are disregarding something. You're disregarding something which is alive. Zok to Nesiv Shalom. That Avelos, what does Avelos on the Beis Hamikdash mean? What does it mean? The Nesiv Shalom says that Avelos on the Beis Hamikdash means that we are not complacent. You just don't come to terms with something with your matzav. You know, in this case, if a person comes to terms and decides that, you know what, like we do with many things today, you know, something bothers you, something happens to you, you come to terms with it, and you say, you know what, it could have been worse. I can live in this kind of matzav. I can make it work for myself. I'll be okay. A person could say that. No. In this case, we have to say, by the Beis Hamikdash, that a person cannot become complacent with anything. And we've brought down a few times from the Kavrina Rav. The Kavrina Rav says that the worst thing that could happen to a yid in his matzav, and spiritually, is if a person is happy with his matzav. He's complacent. Either things are good or things are not good. But you know what? It's okay. I'm just okay. I don't need to grow. I don't need to steig. I don't need to learn anything new. I'm happy. Once a person thinks that he knows it all, or he's happy, or he's complacent with what he has, that's a very bad thing. A person needs to be a growing thing. Steve Shalom brings down a very, very interesting story from a very short story happened with the Apter Rov. The Apter Rov Zatzal, somebody came to the Apter Rov and he was telling him over all his problems. He was telling the Rov, listen, this happened to me and that happened to me and it's not good over here and I don't have a parnasa and I don't have this. And you know, he finished telling the Apter Rov all these things, and it seemed to him, he asked the Rov, he said, why did it seem to me that you weren't commiserating with my problems? Why does it seem to me that you weren't really paying attention? So listen to this question that the Apter Rov asked him. He says, you know what, you were telling me all your problems, and you started in the morning, and you started telling me all the problems you had yesterday in the morning. You went through the whole day, you went through your whole family, you went through everything, and you told me all your problems. He said, let me ask you something. How come when you started telling me your problems, you didn't ask me or tell me that it bothers you that we did not bring a korban tamid this morning? Why doesn't that bother you? The first thing that should bother you, you wake up in the morning, why didn't we bring a korban tamid today? What happened? Bein Hametzorim, you would have a korban tamid in the morning, a korban tamid in the evening. Why not? Why doesn't that bother you? Why doesn't it bother you? Zok to Apter Rov, it doesn't bother you because regarding that, unfortunately, somehow you came to terms with it. Listen, it will be nice when the Beis Hamikdash is built. It's going to help. It's going to be a wonderful thing. But the fact that we don't bring a korban tamid in the morning, the fact that we don't have the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, unfortunately, most of us, we could say that you came to terms with it. It's something we never saw. It's something we don't know about. And basically, this is the way it is. You know, we have our own problems. Every day we have our own pressing issues. We have our own things. This is something we never really saw. So we come to terms with it. That is something that should never happen. That is something, because when you're forgetting about Yerushalayim, like we said, you're forgetting about something which is alive. It's not something that's dead. And that's why the Apter Rov asked him, you have to put your problems in perspective. The problems of a Yid have to begin with every day. We don't have a Beis Hamikdash. We're living without a Beis Hamikdash. When you say, Yerushalayim Ircha, Barachamim Tashuv, you say it 3 times a day in davening. Okay, sometimes it depends when you wake up in Milah Shmona Esrei. Sometimes you wake up by Slach Lanu, you bang yourself and you wake up. So by Yerushalayim Ircha, you're still awake. But many times it happens, we just go right through Shmona Esrei. 3 times a day we ask, Yerushalayim Ircha Barachamim Tashuv, please bring us back to Yerushalayim. We want to be together. We want to have the Beis Hamikdash 3 times a day. You have to have the kavanah. The Siva Shalom brings down from the Beis Avram that the longing and being mispalel for something can sometimes have more of an effect on the person than the actual thing itself. He says that the beginning of the Beis Hamikdash, the beginning of the Binyan Beis Hamikdash, the beginning of our going back to Yerushalayim, what does it start with? And where does it start with? It starts with us being mispalel. It starts with us feeling bad and asking for the Beis Hamikdash. The more you long for the Beis Hamikdash, the more you ask for it, the more you're being mekarev the day. In other words, it starts with a person being not happy with himself. Our longing and our asking and our davening, those are the first bricks that are being built in the Beis Hamikdash. HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs that we should remember that it should bother us that we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. It's brought down, the Sivas Shalom also brings down by Yirmiyahu Hanavi after the Churban. So it's brought down that the philosopher, his name was Apaltoin, the philosopher, he saw Yirmiyahu Hanavi standing in the streets and crying. And he asked Yirmiyahu Hanavi, he said, Yirmiyahu, you're a smart man. You know that what happened, the Beis Hamikdash was burnt, the Beis Hamikdash is gone. It's in the past. Why are you crying? It's not the way of a smart person in those, like we would say today, you're crying over spilled milk. You're crying over something that happened. He said to Yirmiyahu, what are you crying about? Beis Hamikdash is gone. So Yirmiyahu answered him that there's an answer. He said, I have an answer, but I can't tell you the answer. He told the philosopher Apaltai. What was Yirmiyahu's answer? He says, a goy could never understand what I'm crying for. Is a goy can't understand the longing for the Beis Hamikdash. That until we have a Beis Hamikdash, I'm not complete. Klal Yisrael is not complete. Nothing is complete. A goy can never understand it. He says, I'm not crying of Yiyush. I'm not crying over something that happened, something that's gone. I am crying the crying of a Yid. The crying of a Yid is one of tikva, we're hoping, we're longing that what we had before we should have in the future. That's what we want. It says by Moshe Rabbeinu, when the daughter of Paroi saw the basket with Moshe Rabbeinu in the water, it says Vayar Vihine, and she saw Moshe Rabbeinu, and she said it must be Miyaldei Ha'ivrim Zeh. It has to be that this is one of the. She saw Vihine Nar Boiche. She saw a baby was crying, and she said it has to be from the Nar of Ivri. Why? What made her think that? And Sivas Shalom says a beautiful part here. He saw by the way Moshe Rabbeinu was crying. She saw that Moshe Rabbeinu wasn't crying a yiyush. She wasn't crying that he was upset about something which is gone. Moshe Rabbeinu was crying what's going to be. Even then, as an infant, Moshe Rabbeinu was crying about what's going to be in the future. She saw the type of crying that was going on by Moshe Rabbeinu. She said, it has to be Miyaldei Ivrim Zeh. It's not a regular crying. This is the crying of a Yid. And Sivas Shalom says also, he says, unfortunately, he says, during the Holocaust, he said, you know what? People couldn't cry. People did not cry. They were so miyayish. Had they thought that they had 1 ounce of hope, a Yid who has hope, a Yid who believes in something, that something's going to come, that person could cry. But unfortunately, during World War II, people were so broken, they were so miyayish, they couldn't even cry. And it's a known fact. People tell overseas they couldn't cry. There was no crying. It was so miyayish. There was no. It was so unfathomable what was happening that there was no tikva. There was no hope for something to happen down the line. I want to end off just the Megala Amukos says, to tie it into this week's parsha, it's brought down from Megala Amukos and other svarim. The beginning of the parsha starts, Eile Masei Bnei Yisrael. These were the stops, the places where Bnei Yisrael stopped on their way from Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael. Megala Amukos brings down the Rashi Tevis, the beginning letter of each of these 4 words, Eile Masei Bnei Yisrael. What are they? Edom, Modai, Bavel, and Yavon. Eile Masei Bnei Yisrael. In other words, the Yidden had their stops in the Midbar, the Eretz Yisrael, but also encrypted and alluded to in these words of Eile Masei Bnei Yisrael is that Klal Yisrael is going to have stops along the way also in history. And we're going to have 4 hard stops. We're going to have 4 Goliaths. But one thing we know is that we completed that word already. We're now in Golus, we're in the last Golus, we're here for almost 2,000 years, but that's Masei B'nai Yisrael. So a person has to know that we're coming now to Tisha B'Av. We're in the 3 weeks, and when we taka have to, what the Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us is not to be complacent, not to wake up in the morning and say, listen, if the Mashiach comes, it could be I'll be happy. I'll be very happy, but you know what? My house, my car, I'm pretty happy with the way things are right now. That Rebbeinu Shalom wants it to bother us every day and to understand that yes, we're in the 4th Golus, Elam Masei B'nai Yisrael, we're at the last stop. But the only way we're going to get to Yerushalayim, the only way is by being Mikayim in Meshkachech Yerushalayim, that we can't forget for 1 minute. It's something that a Yid has to feel that he's missing every day. We should talk about Zoicha that next week we shouldn't be in the middle of the 9 days. It will be the 9 days of Av, but it should be a Yom Tov, Tisha B'Av, and when we get together, we should be able to have a place of Gesuda. If we can't have it here, hopefully this store will move to Geula. It'll be there, and the Mitzvah will meet. Of course, it'll have to be before 10:30 at night. There's a new Takon and Geula. I think that you can't have Cholent, you can't have things after 10:30 at night. So of course, it's going to conform to all the Takonis, but it's Mitzvah going to be a Yom Tov.